This wasn't the video I was planning on putting out next, but something caught my attention and I just had to make a video about this ASAP. So a couple days ago, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie Rehydrated premiered. It was a fan project where a bunch of people got together and basically remade the first SpongeBob movie from scratch. It's sort of like one of those reanimated projects, except it wasn't just the animation that was brand new, they redid the score and the voice acting too. The project was made to commemorate the show's 23rd anniversary, which coincidentally also occurred on my 23rd birthday, as well as be a tribute to the late Steven Hillenburg. Unfortunately, the video ended up getting blocked worldwide by Paramount almost immediately, and this sparked a lot of outrage, both for the people who worked on it as well as the fans of the project. It was so widespread that hashtag Justice for SpongeBob was even trending on Twitter for about a day. Eventually, it was unblocked from YouTube. It's also been re-uploaded to Newgrounds for those who still want to view it. Now, for anyone who knows me and my opinions regarding network politics, you would know that I tend to be a bit more lax when it comes to companies making certain scummy business decisions like screwing over shows, because I've come to accept the reality that these companies are businesses at the end of the day, and this kind of thing is inevitable in the industry. That's why I tend to get not as vocally angry whenever stories about shows getting prematurely canceled come out, and tend to look at things from the business perspective a little bit more. So when I saw this news, I suggested that Paramount could legally be in the right. After all, they own the intellectual property rights to SpongeBob, and this project technically doesn't qualify as fair use, so they could fully be within the rights to block the video. When I posted that though, I got a lot, and I mean a lot, of people telling me that I was bootlicking, that I was needlessly defending a multi-million-dollar corporation, etc. So today, I'm going to defend my position and try to explain why I believe the Paramount was probably legally within their rights to initially block it. Before I go any further, let me add 3 disclaimers. 1. I live in Canada, not the United States. Fair use, fair dealing, and intellectual property laws aren't 100% the same here. Of course, the difference isn't absolutely drastic. 2. I am not a lawyer. I am not super familiar with fair use and intellectual property laws. I have no idea what could truly happen in court. I invite anyone who actually is knowledgeable on the subject to correct me in the comments if I say anything factually wrong or misleading. 3. Please try to hear me out. Don't leave a mean comment after only hearing one point I make. I encourage you to watch this entire video to hear my full opinion. Alright, with that out of the way, let me explain my case. Fan projects like the SpongeBob SquarePants movie Rehydrated are always a fine line for the people who work on them. Obviously, this isn't the first reanimated project that's ever been made, and it won't be the last. There's actually some that are still in the works right now. The reason they're a fine line is because, at the end of the day, the people working on it do need to be aware of the project at hand. It's an unauthorized version of an already existing piece of media. Whether it's a traditional reanimated project that just keeps the original audio and just has new animation done by various collaborators, animating the visuals for a CD that had a story to it, or remaking an originally animated movie live action. They're a lot of fun to watch, and I do have a lot of appreciation that went into making these. It can definitely be interesting to see the CD, A Very Veggie Christmas, fully anime rather than just being auditory. It can definitely be cool to watch people remake Toy Story in live action beat for beat. However, still at the back of my mind is the fact that none of the people who created or worked on these fan projects got permission from the companies that produced the original to make them. As such, if, or more likely when, these projects do get taken down by the original copyright holder or blocked from YouTube or something similar, people really shouldn't act surprised. I would be a hypocrite if I said that I was against these kinds of projects altogether. I am really looking forward to the final product of the Bye Bye Beavers reanimated project, or, well, animated for the first time I should say. But I do acknowledge that if Nickelodeon or Paramount does shut the project down, they're fully within the legal rights to do so. Malizian, the guy behind the project, never got permission from Nickelodeon to make it. He is technically infringing on Nickelodeon's intellectual property rights. Nickelodeon would probably finally rather animate Bye Bye Beavers themselves than having someone else do it for them. They'd probably love to get whatever revenue they earn from that rather than not making any at all by letting someone else make it instead unofficially. The thing is, companies have the rights to the shows and everything based off their shows. They can decide at any moment that they want to take something down that relates to one of their properties. And since these things do use the characters that they own the rights to and clearly aren't parodies, they are technically IP infringement. Now, I mean absolutely no disrespect at all to all the hardworking people who worked on SB Rehydrated, or the live-action Toy Story, or Very Veggie Christmas animated. I'm sure they were all very passionate about the project and meant no harm to Paramount or Pixar or Big Idea. But they should have been aware going in that the original company taking it down or blocking it was likely to happen. There really is no excuse for being surprised at this. Now I'll admit, everyone watching this video, myself included, have probably broken IP or copyright laws at one point. I used to run out of context Angry Beavers, which mostly just posted clips from the Angry Beavers. That isn't fair use. Nickelodeon or Viacom, Paramount's name at the time, could have suspended that account, or worse, sued me in court. Thankfully, that never happened. It's likely never gonna happen. Realistically, an account suspension is the worst thing that could happen to it. But that's not even the only way that we break IP laws. I'm well aware that any day, I could get sued by Nickelodeon for IP infringement for the Angry Beavers. I call myself Norbert online. Norbert is my profile picture on most of my social media accounts, and I include Norbert in most of my video thumbnails, including this video's thumbnail. I don't own the intellectual rights to the character of Norbert. Nickelodeon does. If they really wanted to, they could sue me tomorrow for infringing on their intellectual property. Of course, the chance of that actually happening is next to zero. Nickelodeon has better things to do than to go after nobodies on the internet using characters from their shows as their profile pictures, and they just look petty and greedy if they did that. That's not the only example of companies letting their intellectual properties being used without permission. You want to know something else that technically breaks IP law that companies turn a blind eye to? Fan art. Drawing fan art of characters from cartoons is technically a violation of intellectual property law. You don't own the rights to those characters you drew, so drawing and posting them online is technically illegal. But again, no company's gonna be petty enough to sue someone for simply drawing a fan art or writing fan fiction. In fact, Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network on their official Twitter and Instagram accounts sometimes post fan art with credit. There's no possible way that posting a drawing of a cartoon character online is acting as a replacement for the original cartoon and hindering people from watching the original cartoon. In fact, it's most likely the opposite, since fan art can bring people's attention to these cartoons. As such, Nick, CN, and pretty much all animation studios pretty much let it slide. It's the same reason why game companies don't try and take down Let's Plays of their games, even though they're not technically reviews or critiques and probably don't fall under fair use. They see it as good publicity for their products, especially when you consider the sheer amount of subscribers that gamers like PewDiePie and Markiplier have. So while it is technically copyright infringement and an argument could be made that all Let's Players are criminals, they just shrug their shoulders and see the attention their games get through these Let's Plays as more than worth it. Of course, if someone tries to sell artwork or comic books based off a show or movie, that's likely a different story. Something else that often gets brought up in this conversation, and one that I mentioned in my original tweet, was about fair use. Fair use covers things like parodies, critiques, journalism, and education. For something to qualify as fair use, it has to be transformative, like using clips from a movie for a movie review or news report. Remaking a movie yourself or making something explicitly based off a movie isn't fair use. It's like how fan-made video games aren't fair use, and Nintendo has every right to shut those projects down since they never approved of them. That doesn't mean defending or bootlegging Nintendo, it's me explaining how the law works. Now, I know that for the people who work on these projects or support them, it's seen as big companies bullying them, but they never got permission for Nintendo to make those games. Nintendo has every right to take them down since they're violating their intellectual property rights. Pointing out the fact doesn't mean I'm taking Nintendo's side or sucking up to a multi-million-dollar company. Going back to SBM Rehydrated, not only does it use characters owned by Nickelodeon, and also people that aren't owned by Nickelodeon, but there's really nothing transformative about it. Despite the animation, voicing, and score all being made from scratch, it's literally just the plot of the first SpongeBob movie again verbatim. It isn't a parody or critique of the original movie, it's a duplicate with new animation, voices, and music that admittedly did have a lot of work and energy put into it, but it's still just copying the original. There's no way around that. There really is no argument for fair use here. You could argue that it should qualify because people are going to SBM Rehydrated to watch the new animation, not the original movie, and thus it doesn't have an effect on the market share of the original, but that argument may not hold much water, no pun intended. A counter argument can be made that it does affect the market share of the original because people could just go watch this free remake of the movie with the exact same plot and dialogue rather than legally pay for or stream for the original. It does essentially replace the original movie. It would be the same effect as filming yourself saying and acting out all the dialogue from Star Wars A New Hope with an iPhone camera and uploading that on YouTube. Sure, it's not exactly the same as the original, but it's still copying the original bit by bit, and thus should be legally considered copyright infringement. Lucasfilm would be entirely in the rights to take that down. That's not me defending Lucasfilm, it's me explaining how copyright law works. Fair use isn't a right, it's a defense. The truth is, nobody can actually 100% know if something really is fair use unless a court rules in favor of it. Of course, there are plenty of things out there that are extremely likely to be considered fair use if they're simply reviews that use short clips. Any of my reviews on YouTube could be ruled by a judge to be breaking copyright law. Of course, I have a pretty good case to argue why they should be argued as fair use. You can't just shout fair use at every fan-made project and pretend the excuse will save all of them from getting shut down. I would make the argument that doing that actually spreads misinformation on fair use and makes people think that fair use defends everything that uses a company's intellectual property when it doesn't. It doesn't matter if you gave credit. It doesn't matter if it's not monetized and nobody will be making any money off of it. Made for profit or not, you can't argue fair use when it's not applicable. And to paraphrase a point Adosa Buckley made in his fair use falsehoods video, arguing that something is fair use when it isn't or probably isn't could actually do more harm to the cause you're fighting for. By claiming that something that most likely isn't fair use really is, you're only making the companies who rightfully took it down to be more bitter about fair use laws. Since this remake project was defended with fair use, and the company could legally take it down, they might be inclined to crack down on other things that actually do qualify as fair use. If you've been on YouTube for any amount of time, you know how broken their copyright system is. Reviews and parodies that are most definitely protected under fair use have been blocked or taken down unfairly. Heck, a lot of my videos are copyright claimed even though there's a 95% chance that they're protected by fair use. YouTube has been complicit to these companies overstepping their rights to take down things that are legally protected by fair use. They'll probably continue to keep being complicit. And if these companies decide to take down tons more fair use reviews and parodies because they're tired of the complaint of fair use being used when they take down illegal fan projects, YouTube's already terrible copyright system could be chipped out even further. Many of the people who claim to be standing up against these companies by defending fan projects don't seem to realize that they might be unintentionally enabling them to do this even more. I know that might sound like a fearmonger or hypothetical, but if you do truly believe in fair use, you need to be aware of what it actually is and what phrases like transformative work really mean. Misusing the concept of fair use could actually make companies hate fair use even more, and given that they're multi-million, sometimes billion-dollar corporations with all the money, power, and lawyers to do essentially whatever they want, they can decide to keep chipping away at fair use until there is no more fair use. That's what could happen if fair use is incorrectly used as a defense for things like fan-made Metroid games or Pokemon games or SBM Rehydrated. I do want to clarify here that I'm not trying to put down any of the animators or anyone else who worked on SBM Rehydrated. They're good, hard-working people, and this was a very interesting fan project. Just like the other fan projects I mentioned before, I do like seeing people come together to make things like this. But you shouldn't act surprised if these projects do get shut down or blocked, and everyone working on them should be aware that it could very well happen. I don't discourage these fan projects from happening altogether. Just make sure that if you decide to participate in one, you're aware of what you're going to get to and the consequences that could happen to the final project. Thankfully, like I said at the beginning of this video, SBM Rehydrated has been unblocked on YouTube. I'm going to put a link to it in the card and the description of this video. Go watch and see all the hard work the animators put into it. Oh, and for those of you who are going to tell me that this video is now moot because SBM Rehydrated isn't blocked anymore, this isn't even specifically about SBM Rehydrated. It's about fan-made products in general and intellectual property laws. Whether it was moral for Paramount to block SBM Rehydrated, though, is a matter of opinion. Regardless of what you think of the company's morality to do it, that's not the point I'm trying to make, and that's irrelevant to this discussion. As much as I'm looking forward to the final product of the Bye Bye Beavers animated fan project, if Nickelodeon or Paramount does take it down due to IP infringement, I'll be disappointed, but I'll accept that they can legally do it. But what do you think about this topic? Are IP laws too strict? Do you think that Paramount should have initially blocked SBM Rehydrated? What do you think about SBM Rehydrated? Let me know in the comments. Oh, and before I go, I actually want to give a thank you to Magnus Lockhart and No Context Paramount. They were two of the very few people who actually agreed with me on the matter and understood what I was trying to say. Thanks for understanding, guys. It's nice to know there's a few people who didn't jump up my throat to call me a corporate bootlicker, because I'm not. I don't lick boots. Not Dennis's boots, or Bigger Boot.